Today, we're tackling a guy who is, without a doubt, one of the most polarizing and fiercely debated figures in American history, our seventh president, Andrew Jackson. He really styled himself as this ultimate champion of the everyday, common citizen, but at the same time, he wielded this uncompromising power that literally altered the nation forever. Okay, let's dive into this and explore the incredibly dual-sided legacy of Andrew Jackson. To truly get a handle on the man, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at how he was orphaned by the revolution. Second, his military conquests and expansion. Third, the bitter election battles. Fourth, his role championing the common man. Fifth, his incredibly complex stance on slavery and the Union. And finally, the Indian Removal Act. Section 1. Orphaned by the Revolution. It's honestly impossible to understand Andrew Jackson without looking at his really tragic youth. Let's move to and see how this builds across a rapid timeline. Born in 1767 near the Carolinas border to Scots-Irish immigrants, his life literally began with loss. His father actually died before he was even born. By age 13, the Revolutionary War hit, and he joined his brothers to fight the British. The cost? Absolutely devastating. He effectively lost his entire immediate family to the war. Yet somehow, from a traumatized orphaned boy, his rise was just meteoric. He studied law, became a district attorney, was elected general of the Tennessee militia in 1802, and was commissioned as a major general by 1812. But during that chaotic revolutionary period, something deeply formative happened. Young Jackson was actually struck by a British officer's sword, leaving a very real, permanent physical scar on his head. But you have to understand, this wasn't just a physical wound. It was a metaphorical scar, too. It fueled this deep-seated, entirely uncompromising hatred for redcoats, elitism, and foreign powers. A fierce hatred that would pretty much define his entire career. Section 2. Military Conquests and Expansion. That intense personal fierceness born in the Carolinas, well, it soon translated into aggressive national expansion. As a military commander, Jackson's campaigns fundamentally reshaped the American map. He defeated the Creek Nation, but he didn't just stop at military victories. He imposed sweeping, forced treaties on the Creeks, Choctaws, Chickasaws, and Cherokees. In doing so, he secured millions of acres of land for white settlers who were eagerly pushing westward. His methods out there were as controversial as they were effective. When ordered to wage war against the Seminoles, Jackson took, let's say, a highly personal and expansive interpretation of his orders. He actually went ahead and invaded Spanish-held Florida. Now, this legally dubious maneuver created a massive international incident, but it forced a huge geopolitical shift. By 1819, Spain ceded the Florida territory entirely to the U.S. Section 3. The bitter election battles. Jackson's undeniable fame as a military hero just rocketed him right into the frenetic, chaotic energy of the early American electoral system. And this brilliantly illustrates the extreme personal highs and devastating lows of his political ascent. In 1824, he won the popular vote, but actually lost the presidency in what he called a corrupt bargain when the House gave the win to John Quincy Adams. So Jackson returned with a vengeance in 1828 to defeat Adams. But that triumph was hollowed out by unspeakable tragedy. His beloved wife, Rachel, died before he could even leave for Washington. You see, that 1828 campaign was notoriously ugly. Adams' supporters launched an absolute barrage of brutal attacks. They brought up unlawful troop executions, his illegal invasions, and heavily mocked him for his innumerable brawls and duels. But the attack that cut him the deepest was when they dragged his wife into the fray, labeling Rachel a bigamist over a really complex divorce issue. Jackson firmly believed that this vicious campaign stress is what killed her. And honestly, he never forgave his political enemies for it. Not ever. So this brings us to a vital question. How did this profoundly bitter campaign, ending in such deep personal tragedy, actually shape his presidency? Section 4. Championing the common man. Entering the White House grieving and embattled, Jackson vowed to make the government work for everyday citizens. He launched an immediate attack on anti-Republican institutions and the political patronage system. His stated goal, well, he claimed appointments should be based strictly on merit. However, the actual practice looked quite different in reality. He routinely rewarded his own loyal supporters with government jobs. This intense demand for fierce loyalty was deeply connected to that unforgiving, adversarial nature he developed after the brutal 1828 election. His crusade also took direct aim at the financial elite. In a massive move, he famously vetoed the renewal charter for the Second Bank of the United States. To Jackson, the bank wasn't just a financial institution. It was a corrupt, government-backed monopoly that exclusively favored the wealthy at the direct expense of the common, everyday citizen. Section 5. Slavery and the Union. Now, let's look objectively at his complex relationship with slavery and federal authority. During his time in office, Jackson strongly supported the gag rule. This was a parliamentary procedure designed to suppress abolitionist literature and completely prevent any congressional debates on slavery. Jackson actually blamed both pro-slavery fanatics and abolitionists, seeing both groups as instigators of sectional discord that directly threatened the nation's stability. That same intense focus on national stability drove his reaction to the nullification crisis of 1832. This was a major confrontation where South Carolina declared federal tariff laws null and void. Jackson didn't hesitate for a second. He was eager and entirely willing to use military force to ensure compliance. His commitment to preserving the Union over any kind of state defiance was absolute. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the profound paradox it reveals. On one side, Jackson was a prominent slave owner his entire life, even purchasing enslaved people while serving as president at the White House and his Hermitage plantation. He fiercely respected individual property rights and saw no moral qualms with profiting from slavery. Yet on the other side, we have Jackson, the uncompromising Unionist. He suppressed abolitionist literature to prevent discord and forced South Carolina to comply with federal law. He fiercely protected his personal property rights while aggressively wielding the overriding power of the federal government against anything threatening the Union. Section 6. The Indian Removal Act. We now turn to examine what is undoubtedly the most controversial legacy of his administration. The year is 1830. This was the pivotal moment President Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, leading the federal government to force dozens of deeply unfair treaties on Native American peoples in order to push them off their ancestral lands. So, the crucial point is the jarring disconnect between the political rationale and the historical reality. Jackson maintained that removal was the best solution. His stated intentions were that moving Native Americans west would preserve their cultures, prevent assimilation, and limit violence. But the factual outcome? It was a devastating relocation, where tens of thousands died as they were forcibly pushed westward by the military. The historical record is incredibly grim. As the source material explicitly states, this devastating relocation resulted in the deaths of tens of thousands of indigenous peoples as they were forcibly pushed westward by the military. It is a massive human cost that forever stains this era, and it's something we really just have to let sit with us for a moment. After his presidency, Jackson returned to Tennessee. He spent his final days managing his plantation at the Hermitage until he died in 1845. Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought. How do we reconcile the legacy of a man who tirelessly championed the common citizen while simultaneously architecting such devastating policies? It's a massive, complex puzzle that continues to define our understanding of Andrew Jackson today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history you think you know.